Welcome back. In this video, I would like to talk about setting up a development environment for Monome Aleph. As I said in the introduction to this series, I'll be covering the steps in Ubuntu Sever, specifically 20.04 LTS. Because there are a lot of other videos that do a lot better job of covering the install and setup process, I won't be covering every single step, and I'm going to sort of go through an abbreviated installation process, and then talk about the specific packages that we need to install for Aleph. Also, I know I said I would also talk about setting up an Arch Linux development environment in the introductory video, but since I think the kernel has been updated beyond the point where it will support GCC 4.9.4, I don't think that will be very helpful. Plus, this video got pretty long with just the discussion of Ubuntu Sever. Okay, the first thing to do is go to the canonical page for Ubuntu 20.04 downloads. I guess the process we are going to cover might work in another version too, but I'm not sure, and I have only done this in 20.04. You need a disk image and ISO, and I would really recommend verifying it. This is something that I always do, and I think it's important. You don't have to verify, but I would recommend doing it, and Canonical does provide documentation on doing it. Next, I am going to jump over to my instance here. Okay, so I have my machine, virtual machine in this case, install setup and on pause. So let's get started and work through and install here. Just something to point out, I am going to be blurring out some of the information and screens just for a bit of added caution. Anyway, it's going to sort of work through its preliminary process here. And once we get to this screen, we know that we are ready to go. So I'm going to be selecting English because that's the language that I use, but feel free to select any language that you would like. Something to point out here is that depending on the size of your monitor, and a lot of other factors, you may get instances like this where you can't see the bottom of the installer screen. It seems like this is less of a problem with non-virtual machine installs. But there may be some settings that could prevent it. So, I'm going to continue without updating, realizing that this is maybe not the best idea. Okay, and again I have to do a little bit more scrolling here. English and English is okay for me. So let's go. I'm going to say that's good. Done. I don't need a proxy address. And I'll just use the default download site for packages. I want to use the entire disk. I guess by default it sets it up as an LVM group. I'm not going to encrypt or anything. I don't need any custom settings. For this one, you'll actually have to kind of arrow down to get it. So, if everything looks good on the file system summary page here, then you can select Done. Ubuntu will say that it's going to start the installation process and wipe out your disk. Is this okay? And if it's not, please choose No, but I want to continue, so I'm going to choose Yes. Okay, so at this point, we need to enter in a name, username, and password. When choosing a password, it might be good to choose one that meets all the guidelines for a strong password. And hopefully my passwords match, so that I will be able to continue. Great. I don't want OpenSSH. It's something that I can set up later if I change my mind, but I don't need it right now. I don't need any extra stuff, so we'll say no. Okay. Something that I should probably point out here is that Ubuntu Sever, especially in VMs for whatever reason, has a tendency to hang on this particular step, and during install in general. I think one of the reasons is because I'm using an older image. But another reason is because, if you can, you should use safe graphics mode for installation. It seems like one major cause of installation issues is not using safe graphics mode, so I would recommend using it if you can. I am also not going to install updates right now, because it causes the process to take even longer, and I think it is easier to do after you have logged in. If you are noticing some lag, or if you couldn't use safe graphics mode, one thing that you can do is view the full log. The reason that this is helpful is because it lets you see what's going on. Like when it hangs on canceling update, which is what I think it's going to do for a little while. You can view the full log and see progress, or at least what is going on. So, I'm probably just going to wait until this is finished, and jump the video ahead a bit. Okay, so we are back after install. I was able to get it to start up, but I would like to talk about a couple of things really quickly. As I said at the beginning, some steps are not going to be covered in this video. Just because I'm not sure if the same kind of issues will happen every time in every setup. Basically, when I set up Ubuntu Server in my system, usually what happens is it takes an incredibly long time to install. I realize that you might be tempted to sort of force quit partway through when the installer lags, but in my experience, this can result in some really bad issues. Also, even when I wait all the way until the end, it will usually say something like, "Was not able to install for your username. Please go through the installation process again." It doesn't happen every time, and I think it relates back to the safe graphics mode, which I don't think is available on my system. What I usually do is wait until I either make it through or get the error. When I do get the error, I force quit. By force quit I mean stopping the machine from the VMware, Hyper-V, or VirtualBox side. In my system, clicking this down arrow displays an option for force quit. After force quitting, I restart. Sometimes there's some extra junk on the screen, but I've normally had good results with everything being set up and being able to log in. So that's the point that I am at now. I was able to log in. Also, I guess for a little bit of extra caution, I do a reboot after the first time I log in. I realize that different processes may work better for different systems, but this is what seems to work on my system for installing Ubuntu Server as a VM. So at this point, I am dealing with a very basic Ubuntu install. Now, I would like to talk about necessary packages for working with Aleph. In my experience, these are the packages that I need to get stuff up and running. Before we do though, let's do an update. I'm pretty sure this is right. We'll see. Right, so then it looks for all of our updates that we didn't do before, and gets them for us. It will just take a minute. Okay, so at this point what I'd like to do is go through and start installing the necessary packages. First, let's get the GCC compiler. So again, sort of because of the way this stuff works on my system, sometimes I need to scroll down. Most of the rest of these are supplemental tools that we also need specifically to work with Aleph. I realize that we could install all of these together, but I'm going to go through the list one at a time, like I have it on the wiki. I seem to remember that some of them may not be available, and I just want to go through one at a time, just to make sure that we can get everything that we need, and make it clear if something isn't there. Okay, so, like I had in the wiki, i32libs is no longer available, so the replacement is lib32z1, so that's what we'll be installing instead. Next, I also needed to install two supplementary tools. Unzip will be necessary for getting things set up for Aleph, but udisks is optional. Okay, so at this point I am going to upgrade the system and reboot. Okay, so now we are back from our reboot. I also copied the tools over because I have them saved locally. It's very easy to get the Blackfin toolchain online, and the Monome guide discusses where it is available. AVR takes a little bit more work, but it is also doable. The first thing that I want to do is make sure that all the toolchains are there. So everything appears to be there. The next thing that we want to do is just sort of follow the procedures as they were written by Monome. I just copied their steps over. And after we copied the directories, it might be good to make sure that they were copied successfully. So yes, we have AVR and AVR32 from the headers that have been included in the toolchain directory, so we should be good to go there. Next, we need Superuser, because we need to move the Blackfin toolchain to root. It looks like everything went okay there. Since I already did update and upgrade, I'm not going to do that again. I'm just going to try adding items to the path. And let's see what happens. Okay, so now if we check path we should see that. Crud. For some reason, AVR32 doesn't appear to have been added. Okay. Now it looks okay. So, everything has been included in the path, hopefully, and so now we are going to try test compiling one of the DSP modules. Before we can do that, we actually need to clone the GitHub repository to get the source code. Okay, so at this point, we should have everything that we need to compile one of the DSP modules, so let's give it a try. We need to go into the main Aleph directory. And we need to go to modules. And we have our modules, so let's just try waves. Okay, so we have our make file and everything else. To compile, well, let's just do make clean first. And since we haven't really done anything yet, it will tell us it can't do anything. Next, let's try make deploy. And again I have to scroll down a little bit here. But essentially, if we get to the end here and all of the descriptors and everything have been successfully compiled, and it says done with no apparent errors, then we should be okay. Now we have everything that we need, and we can copy the .dsc and .ldr files to the memory card's mod directory, and plug it into Aleph, and everything should work. And I will give it a try at the end of the video. So that is the basic procedure for setting up a minimal development environment for Aleph. I realized that I sort of skipped over some of the Ubuntu setup steps, and also the actual procedures that might need to be undertaken for getting the toolchains and things, but Monome does provide good instructions in the documentation on how to get the toolchains. For me, other than finding the AVR32 tools, the process of getting the toolchains wasn't that difficult. Setting up a working development environment and getting things to actually compile successfully is what took the longest, and was the most difficult. Okay, so I'm going to end with a very basic demo of the Waves module I just compiled. Thank you for listening.